Oh, I can't hear you. I think you might be muted.
How about now?
I can hear you great now.
Awesome.
Are you there? Okay. Okay, there we go. I'm sharing the screen with you. So, um, under content, this is how you'll go to the major project stuff. There's a whole module set aside for the major project. And I have, the individual chapters listed separately, but you can scroll past that, instead of looking at the PowerPoints for each individual chapter, I have the overview PowerPoints that I used for the video that messed up in migration and now it's private. And I've got to figure out how to unprivatize it so it's useful to you guys. I apologize for that. I just saw that this morning, that my link wasn't working. But right below it, until I have a chance to either recover that video and change the settings or re-record it. For now, you can click on the PowerPoint, and the video is just me going through the PowerPoint. So everything that is important is in this PowerPoint. I mean, and the attendance QR code is not necessary. But when you're going through the PowerPoint, there are going to be slides, as you can see right here, where something in red, or to draw your attention, it's like for your project, and that is a useful, hint of something that would be helpful for your project. Um, after we talk about requirements for business forms, and how to name them, like, having the LLC at the end of a limited liability company or an LP for a limited partnership, that kind of stuff. In real life, you don't necessarily always have to reserve your name. And that is a typo right there. I'll have to fix that. That should be name reservation, not name registration. Normally, I'm not used to going through these slides so individually, and I didn't realize I had a typo. But it's a name reservation form that you can fill out for the Secretary of State and submit it. Like, in the real world, you'd submit this form with a fee to hold on to your name that you want to reserve for your company while you're in the process of getting the paperwork together. And so that will reserve the name. For our purposes, since it's just a pretend academic project, that's a form where you're showing me what you know. You're showing me that you know how to give a good legal name to your company. So if you're creating a corporation, you know to add corporation or Inc. or something like that to the end. If you're creating an LLC, to add LLC to the end, et cetera, that kind of stuff. So it's relatively easy points because it's a PDF file that you fill out, like your name and your address. If you can fill out all the blanks and then give me 3 name variations at the bottom that are legally sufficient because they include, like right here, where I talk about the, types of names and stuff like that, you will get full credit for that. And then also I have a little note in here about, remember, your cover letter is your first page of your project. Nothing else in your project has a specific order, but I do want you to start with your cover letter because that indicates, like, if you worked by yourself, just your name, or if you had partners, you'd have all the partners' names on that cover letter. The blanks for the cover letter, while I'm talking about it, I'll just go to the sample. Hopefully my screen sharing is following my clicks. Is it following my clicks?
Mhm. Yes.
So over here, I have a sample cover letter right here. So for the sample cover letter, it's just a sample. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but I provide it for you just so that you have like a basic outline of something to start with so that you're not wasting a ton of energy. Like, what on earth do I put in a cover letter for this project? Like, I don't even know. I want you to spend your energy on the important stuff for the project, showing me what you've learned in these chapters. And so I just give you a sample cover letter where you can fill it in with like whatever your business is, the date. You can use that. That's just the school address, sort of. The school address is really 1601, but whatever. And then there's not a specific answer for these blanks. These are just random blanks that you can just say whatever you want to say. So if you want to tell me 2 things instead of 3 or 5 things or whatever, you can just list those kind of things that might be your next step. So like, as you begin a business, like, what's the next kind of thing you want to do? Maybe you need some kind of license, or you want to rent a space or start a website or something that's outside the scope of the project. You can just talk about it there. But the cover letter is your one chance to speak directly to me. It's different than the rest of the form. So if there's anything you want me to know about why you picked your business or what you were thinking, like you can explain that kind of stuff in the cover letter, because that's when you're just talking to me about this business that you just formed for pretend for your project. Okay. Any questions about the cover letter before I go back to the instruction section? Okay. So yeah, so recap temporarily while this video link is not working. The PowerPoint that goes with the video link is just right below it. So that has everything. Sample cover letter. I'll start back at the top with the overview of the major project. This talks about, why we're doing this project, learning objectives, but there's also like a checklist, just a very basic checklist, but it helps you kind of know if you're on track for the project. Did you select a choice of entity for your business that's appropriate? That's a little bit of a hint saying I'm giving you all the choices you can choose that are available in Georgia, but some choices are not as appropriate as others. Some choices are really hard and complicated to form, so that's not a good choice because if you mess it up, you're not protecting yourself. Some choices don't have any protection at all, like some of the stuff you learn in Chapter 16, sole proprietorship, general partnership. Terrible choices with project because it's not protecting you. This is business law. You want to be protected, right? So an appropriate choice of entity is an easy 20% of your grade right there. Make a good choice. After you've read all 3 chapters, you'll know pretty definitively what choices are better than others. Drafting the paperwork required to form it in Georgia law. That's a nod to the Secretary of State's website. It's got some fillable forms that help you create a business in Georgia specifically. And I've linked that as one of your allowed resources. Documents for tax treatment. Some businesses might need special tax treatment. If you're creating like a nonprofit corporation, there would be special tax forms I'm looking for. That's why the IRS website is a website that you're allowed to use. But there's one particular form in order to pay your taxes, you're going to want an EIN number. And so that's one, no matter what kind of entity you're forming, I'm expecting everybody to turn in a form requesting an EIN. And just the form, just the PDF form. Please don't request an EIN in real life because there's no charge for that. And the IRS absolutely will give you an EIN. And with that comes an expectation that maybe you're going to be a taxpayer in the very near future. And so you don't want to get that letter saying, hey, business owner, where's Uncle Sam's cut of your profits when you just did that for a project? So please don't request that in real life. And then drafting a governing document is something I'm looking for. Now, this is a document that you're expected to create yourself from what you've learned in your textbook. So in your book, let me grab a textbook real quick. I'm just grabbing this so that I don't have to click over my screen to Mind Tap. But in your textbook, whatever type of entity you're forming, there's going to be a section in that chapter that talks about a governing document. So for example, if you are creating a corporation, that would be your bylaws, and it will suggest the kind of provisions you'd include. If you're creating a limited liability company, there's a section on the LLC operating agreement with the kinds of provisions you would include. Think of that as like the recipe for creating this document. And that's student created work. You're just making it up yourself. I'm not looking for legalese in a contract, and I'm definitely not looking for anything that's been plagiarized from the internet where you just go to Google and say, give me a sample operating agreement, and you turn in somebody else's work. This is an opportunity for you to show me that you can take something you learned in a textbook and create something that's useful in real life. So again, I'm not looking for it to be absolutely sound like it was written by a professional lawyer who does this every day. I'm looking for you as a student to show me that you were able to apply something you learned in the textbook to create this, governing document. And then draft meeting minutes for your first organizational meeting. A couple of things I'm looking for in this project that are just based on my real life experience as an attorney, especially when I was working in bankruptcy court. So many small businesses fail to do the formalities. And by not doing those formalities with keeping good business records, keeping their finances separate from the business, they put themselves at greater risk for someone to be able to pierce the corporate veil and say, this is not a separate entity from the owner. The owner is the business. Therefore, it's all in one, like a sole proprietorship that doesn't have that protection. And so by asking you for this project to, include some record of the first organizational meeting, and it's just like, this is what I did. This is what I decided to accomplish. It's not an agenda of what you want to talk about. It's more like the record of what was actually done. okay, is what minutes are. If you've ever been part of a club or something that recorded minutes, you talk about what you did the last meeting before you get to the agenda for this meeting. And so those meeting minutes are part of the keeping business records. Even if you're in business by yourself, you're the only owner, like those record keeping habits show that you're going the extra mile to do those formalities to protect your business and keep it a separate entity. And then financial records. So I'm looking for I think I refer to it as a checks page in the instructions, but basically one page of your project that's dedicated to either, showing the checks that would have been sent out to pay these fees to start your business. So you can use just clip art check in a Word document, just a rectangle, very simple. Who did you pay? How much did you pay? What was it for? Kind of thing. Or you could even make a chart with that same kind of information. There's just a few fees that are going to be required to create this business, the very basic level. And that's what I'm looking for. Did you do your research and find those fees that were required? And you'll let me know that you found them, that they were required by putting them on your checks page, including that you recognize there was an annual registration fee. So at the beginning of the year, even if the business was just barely formed in like December, every year there's like a renewal annual registration fee. And so I just want you guys to include that on your checks page to show me that, in your research, you found out that an annual registration fee was required for making sure your business gets renewed every year. That's the overview. I'll go into the major project instructions page. This is a PDF that you can download or you can print out or whatever. You can just read it on your computer. This project, I hope it's fun for at least some of you. I know that projects aren't always fun for everybody, but to me, it's at least more fun than a test. Can you give me that? So, this is an opportunity to show me what you've learned, to assess your learning in this area. And it's just not another exam. It's a project that you have a little bit more control over, you have more time to really make sure you've done all the parts and that kind of thing. And you can reach out to me for feedback if you have questions, as opposed to like on a test, you can't really if you get halfway through the test and there's material you don't know, there's not an opportunity to like pause and start over, But for a project, if you start early enough working on it, then you'll have enough time to like find all the answers for things or get feedback from me. What you're going to turn in is one file. So it can be a Word document, it can be a PDF file, but all of the different government forms that you fill out from like maybe the website, like IRS website, Secretary of State's website, the documents you create yourself, they all need to be combined into one document file that you're turning in. And again, like I said, I don't care if you do it on a Mac and it's in Pages format, or if you do it on a Google Doc, or you do it in Word, or you put it all in a PDF. Personally, as an attorney, like I'm a fan of PDFs because you can lock everything in place. I don't know if any of you've had that experience where you share a document with somebody and they have a different version of Word or something and it looks goofy when they try to open it up. Sometimes you can have compatibility issues, and PDF will freeze everything in place so you won't have that problem. And most of your word processing things, when you get to the very final version of your project, you can just do a file save as PDF or print as a PDF. Or sometimes if you are printing things out separately and you're scanning it together, at the end, your scanner will automatically put it in a PDF if you scan it like with your phone or on a printer scanner. And then you're going to be graded. Again, 20% of your grade, like 2-letter grades, is on a good choice of entity. So that can be a really easy 20%, or it can really be heartbreaking if one bad choice causes you to lose 2-letter grades off the top of your project because you didn't pick an entity that protects yourself. So this is your warning, like sole proprietorship and general partnership leave you wide open for liability. So don't pick those. And I will give you, I break the other 70% of your grade into 35 points for finding all the documents that you needed. And then the other 35 points is if you filled them out correctly or did them correctly. So you'll get points for the research component of making sure you've included all the right things. And then there's 35 points based on like the quality of the documents or if you filled them out correctly or made mistakes, that kind of stuff. And then 10 points overall with, did you follow instructions? Is it generally like neat and nice and looks professional as you're turning it in? There's not a ton of like typos and grammatical issues, like that kind of stuff. And again, I'm available to help answer questions this week. I can meet with you one-on-one. I can look at a draft. If you get it to me early, the closer we get to the deadline, the less likely I'm going to be able to like review a draft and give you feedback in time for you to still turn it in on time. And then available resources and prohibited resources. So again, I want you to stick to just showing me what you've learned as far as our class is concerned. You don't have any need to go outside of these authorized websites, the IRS, the Secretary of State, and then I've also linked the official code of Georgia. There's only one entity type that really needs that, and it's a very difficult entity type to form because you have to form it through the court system. Um, there's not like fillable forms. So if you were choosing to create that kind of business entity, it would be very difficult. Hopefully you'd reach out to me this week and I could help you come up with an alternative option, because in order to get a good score on this project, you have to show me that you're protecting yourself by picking an entity that protects you, but also you protect yourself by forming it correctly. Because if you don't form it correctly, then you don't have that bubble of protection, so to speak, of that entity. Okay, that's the instruction page. There's a discussion board that I have linked here. If you were looking for a partner on the project or something like that, you can reach out to each other to talk about that. That's not for like telling people how to do the project, but it's for connecting with other people if you're looking for a partner still for the project. I already talked about the sample cover letter and the problem with the video link. And then here's the links for those 3 websites that you're allowed to use. I'll go over those in just a second, but really quick, if you are working with a partner or two, and you're allowed to work with up to 3 people for this project, you easily can do it by yourself. You don't have to have partners, but sometimes people prefer to have a partner to commiserate with or just to like bounce ideas off of or something. But if you do work with a partner, you're expected that every single person in the group is going to be turning in a group member evaluation for their partners individually, so that it's, just between you and me, so that if you feel like somebody didn't do their end of the work or something like that, you can let me know individually. And I need every person in the class to be uploading something to the assignment Dropbox so I can give you a grade. Because I can't grade an empty Dropbox under your name. So if you did work with a partner, I only need 1 copy of the project because I don't need to grade the project itself twice, but I'll need everybody to turn in this group member evaluation. So if you're if you're in a partnership or a group of 3 and you're the designated partner to turn in the group member evaluation, to turn in the project, you'll turn in the project, that 1 copy for your whole group, and you'll turn in your own individual group member evaluation. And then your other partner or 2 will just turn in their group member eval. And that's it. Does that make sense? Okay. Back to the resources. So the first one I'm going to click on is the website that everybody will use to some degree for this project, and that's the Georgia Secretary of State's website. Did my shared screen still take you with me? Okay. For the Secretary of State's website, this is where you'll do a lot of your research on what does Georgia require for, forming a different business entity. If you already have kind of an idea of what you want to do, if you want to do a corporation or an LLC, something like that, you can click anywhere on here and look for stuff and learn about things. But I want to make sure that you see this link right here. Do you see where it says forms? This is the best place to go and find all of the fillable PDF forms all in one place. So there's a lot of forms that are available, plenty of forms you won't need, but through your research and learning, you'll find forms that you do need for your particular type of entity that you're forming. Just for an example, I'll use LLC because that's a very popular type of entity to form for the project for a good reason. I mean, it's a safe for the business owner. It creates a separate entity, business entity separate from, like a general partnership or sole proprietorship that doesn't create a separate entity. And it's relatively straightforward and easy to form. And that's why they're very popular in real life and they're popular for this project. So if you were forming a limited liability company, here's a document that you might want to click on. It's called the filing procedures for LLC. And if you click on that, it gives you kind of like a summary of what you may have already found on the Secretary of State's website. And it doesn't want to open on my computer. Of course, there we go. Okay. You guys are looking at this document with me, right? It took you there. Okay. this is also kind of a helpful checklist of the type of documents you might need. A name reservation, we talked about that earlier, showing me that you know how to give a good legal name to your business. Articles of organization is something that you need to include with your, forms to the Secretary of State to create this business. For your articles of organization, there's a fillable version available on the Secretary of State's website that you can just fill in blanks for, or here in these instructions or these kind of filing procedure document, they give you kind of a sample of articles of organization. So you can cut and paste from this sample and create your own in your Word document as you're creating everything else, or you can include that fillable PDF. I'll show you that in a minute. You'll file articles of organization in the transmittal form. That's another fillable form. Here we talk about fees. Remember, you're gonna have a checks page telling you what kind of fees you paid. Annual registration, everybody's got to pay a fee for that. That's something else you want to include in your checks page, all that kind of stuff. And then at the end, it gives you some other ideas for LLC. But remember, in your instructions, I've told you you're only allowed to use like the stuff for our class, our textbook, MindTap, CourseDen, and 3 websites, IRS, the OCGA, or the Secretary of State's website. So if you see something recommended from the IRS website, you're like, okay, cool, that's something I probably need. If you see something recommended from right here, Georgia Department of Revenue, scratch that off. That's not something you'll include. That's not a website that's outside the scope of our project. So that's the reason I've limited your websites to prevent plagiarism for your governing document, and also to limit the scope of the project, that you don't need these extra registrations and things for everything you might comply with a regular business. I'm looking for just this academic exercise for our legal environment class. Same thing with workers' comp insurance. That's a website you're not supposed to use, so that's not something you need to include. Department of Labor, again, that's not an authorized website. Don't include it on your project. Here we go. Beneficial ownership information, not required for your project. So hopefully that helps it make a little bit more sense where we narrow down the scope of what is required and not required for the project. Just to show you an example of some of these fillable forms, for example, on this list, again, there's lots of forms available. Some you'll need, some you won't. Everybody will need to include this form in their project. This is the name reservation form. And you'll see when you pull up this form, you can type directly into the form. So I can go on this form, and if I could type right, type my name directly in the form, fill it out. And what I'm looking for is that the form's completely filled out and you've given me 3 distinct name variations that all follow the rules, that they're legally sufficient names for whatever type of entity you're forming. And then I'll click over here for another one of the approved resources. Like I said, most of you will not need the OCGA. There's only one type of entity that needs that, and it's not a great choice for the project. So I won't click through that for you. I do include it if someone was going to try to create that kind of entity. They have the resources they need. I've done this project now. I started in 2019, I think. And so in the 5 years I've done this project with lots of different students, I've never had a student successfully create that type of entity. Okay, so this is the IRS website. Remember I said that no matter what you're forming, I'm asking everyone to complete the application to get an employee identification number. Think of it as like a social security number for this business entity, because part of what you're learning in what I'm assessing is that you are creating that separate legal entity that protects you as the owner. So in the search box, I'm going to type in EIN application, look for it. And right here, it says recommended by IRS. Okay, this would be an online application. Please, please, please don't click here because I don't want you to request an EIN in real life. There's no charge. They'll issue you one, and then you have an EIN without an actual business to go with it. Instead, for our project, since it's this pretend, it's an academic exercise, I want you to use the PDF version. So you'll see there's a PDF document that has instructions for this form, and there's a PDF document that has the form itself. Both of these are important. I'll click on the instructions first. This is a little bit different than the documents you'll find on the Secretary of State's website in Georgia. The instructions are usually included with the form. They're like the front page or the back page or something. for your final version of your project, I don't need you to include instruction pages. I just need you to include the actual government documents with the documents you create yourself. But these instructions help you understand how to fill out the form. So these are the instructions for the SS4 form. What you'll see in the beginning is some general instructions. And then you'll get to this section called specific instructions, and it will go line by line. Line 1, this is how to complete the form. If you're, with the legal name of the entity requesting the form, individuals, a trust, an estate, for someone's passed away, a partnership, corporation, plan administrators, an Indian tribal government, all those kind of things. It just shows you how to complete it, every single line. Some things are going to be completed different for different types of entities. We see right here with this section, there's a whole bunch of information if you're an LLC, if you're a sole proprietor, if you're a corporation. And so that's why I wanted to draw your attention to the instruction page first, because you see there's a lot of valuable information on how to fill the form correctly. And then when you click on the form itself, sorry guys, the school internet's going slow today for me. This form is, again, just a fillable PDF where you can type directly into the form. And there's another kind of instruction page. Do I need an EIN? Yes, for the project, you need an EIN just because your teacher told you did. So in real life, there's some reasons why someone could just use your social security number for it instead of having an EIN. But since this is an academic exercise to show what you know, I'm asking everybody to go through the steps of requesting an EIN, doing a name reservation, even though those are, and keeping, formal business records, because of just what I've seen in real life and how that can protect you. Because at the end of the day, I hope this project can be empowering for you to show you that you have the capability of doing these things in real life that a lot of people that want to start businesses have to pay money to hire lawyers or accountants to do this for them. So hopefully after you've done this, you're like, it was intimidating maybe at first, but then once you get into it, you see how accessible it potentially really is. And if you find yourself in a place where you have a really great idea and not a budget to be able to afford a lot of professionals to help you get started, you can protect yourself and get started with the business and protect yourself by setting up a business that gives you some insulation from liability and creates that bubble of protection around you, and you're going to follow all the steps and do all the things right, so people can't pierce that corporate veil, so to speak. So I know I've done a lot of talking. I've talked really fast, but this is really a Q&A for you guys. Cadence started me off with a little bit of question. I started talking about how to get started and never stopped. So I apologize for not giving you more opportunities to ask questions, but now is your time to ask me whatever you had on your mind. And
Believe it. Do you know on the Secretary of State website, like it's different, like the way you clicked it, it was like a different kind of page compared to what I see. I don't know if like you can screen share again to see like where to get to the form area.
okay, do
I
you want to
just
screen share what it looks like for you when you pull it up?
yeah, I can screen share it.
Okay, let me make sure I've got my settings to where. Yeah, it says you should be able to share. It says just as long as one person sharing the time is all the settings I see on my screen.
It says host disabled for me.
Oh,
Why?
well, let me see if I can fix that. Oh, all participants can share. Okay, try it now.
There. Yeah. Okay. There. Can you see this?
Huh?
Okay. I don't know where to go for the forms
Okay,
on this.
scroll down from
Okay.
there. Okay, it took you to a different page than where I went. And that's where the link takes you.
This is where it took me, yes.
Okay, you should still be able to find a link for all the forms. Try clicking on business services, because it looks like it just rerouted you to instead of taking you directly to the corporation's business. Okay, now scroll down more to where those boxes are with links. There you go. Okay, the link for forms is in that third box over. It's the last choice.
Okay, there it is. Okay, thank you.
So I was trying to link you directly to the corporation's page, but it looks like it must be redirecting you to the main Secretary of State's
And then,
homepage.
okay, here's all the stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, so from that homepage, clicking something that's like about businesses or about corporations or something will take you to the corporations division because it's a division amongst all the other things the Secretary of State does for the
Okay.
state of Georgia.
Well, thank you for helping me with that.
No problem. That's good to know though that like it looked different on your computer than it did on mine.
I think
Anybody
that's
else?
all the questions I had, at least. I have everything saved, so it's easy to
Okay.
do.
I have a question about the EIN form.
Okay.
On the page that's under the actual form, it says it has different instructions for making a new business and then making an LLC, or like filling it out for a new business and then filling it out for an LLC. For this, should I fill it out like it's a new business, or should I just focus on it being an LLC?
I'll accept it either way.
Okay.
So you can fill it out for yourself that you're going to eventually assign it to your LLC that hasn't been formed yet, or you can fill it out like your LLC's already been approved and set up for the Secretary of State and use that name. Either one of those, because I'll be scrolling back and forth in your documents, is going to be okay with me. Just make sure you fill out the PDF version, like I said, and not the real online one. And then the other thing is sometimes for like these kinds of situations, like if you're a single member LLC, some people don't always set up an EIN. But again, for the academic exercise, for purposes of our class, like there's some ways that you can show me what you know as you fill out that form. So I'm just asking for everybody, whether they're a single member LLC or an LLC with a whole handful of folks that are members, same thing with a corporation. If you're a corporation where you are the 100% shareholder only person, like I still, want you to show me all the steps, or if you have partners or that kind of thing. And then if you do have partners and you're filling out these forms, it's okay to just have, with certain exceptions, like the articles of organization need to include everybody's name. Your governing document needs to include everybody's name. But if you're filling out like a name reservation, it's okay for that to just be one person, one partner's name that filled out that form. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
But the ones that like are legally binding to establish the business, all of the people in the group that are working together on this project, I'm assuming, unless you tell me otherwise in the cover letter, that you're all planning to be equal part owners in the business. So that's what I'd kind of expect to see laid out in the documents. If you decide to plan it another way, that's fine. Just let me know what that's going to be like in your cover letter so you don't lose points for that. Like if someone is the money man and somebody else is going to be the person running it day to day, and you've made like different ways to share the profits because of that, because someone's put more money down or something like that. Like that's fine. Let your imaginations run wild. You can do whatever you want with this business plan of yours. But I just want to, for it to make sense to me, I want to see you like, let me know whatever I need to know that's relevant like that.
Okay.
So that's why the cover letter can really be whatever you want it to be.
I have another question for the checks. When we have to do like show a check, can we just take like a clip art or like a JPEG or something and write on
Absolutely.
the
Yeah. So
okay.
in your Word document, just a clip art or something like that, that doesn't violate the rule about your authorized resources or anything like that. You can just go and include, a clip art check that you find, like searching through like word clip art or even find on Google or something like that for just the clip art. Same thing for like artwork or logos. If you wanted to make like a cover sheet or a fun like letterhead or something, like you could do all that. That's not going to violate, my rules on plagiarism. What I'm really looking for is that you didn't go for your governing document, like your LLC operating agreement, and I want to make sure that you went and wrote that yourself based on what you learned in your book and not downloaded somebody else's operating agreement from like LegalZoom or some other website. Because there's plenty of websites out there that'll give you sample forms of those kind of governing documents for bylaws or operating agreements or whatever. But that doesn't show me what you learned when you read that chapter. I can't assess your learning from chapter 17 if you're giving me like 30 pages of somebody else's legalese. And so that's what I'm really focusing on when I'm talking about like plagiarism and stuff like that, is that you're not copying somebody else's documents from a company that already exists. Like you've got a friend or a family member or something, and you just are using the documents that they created when they formed their business. And I want you to go through these steps yourself. And then when you're creating your own governing document, even though you're making it from scratch, you can use what you've learned in some of these other documents to kind of format it. So give it a title, the name of your business. This is such and such business's operating agreement or bylaws or whatever. And then put some kind of a heading or whatever on your paragraphs in your textbook. For example, let me flip open to what the suggested provisions are in chapter 17. For example, so still going with the LLC example again, because I said that's a pretty common example for this project. In chapter 17-2, it talks about LLC management and operations. And then in 17-2C, it says the LLC operating agreement. And so in this section, it gives you 6 different provisions. The first one is management and how future managers will be chosen or removed. So you could title that paragraph, like give it Roman numeral 1 or number 1 or a bullet point or something and entitle it management. And then talk about how it's going to be managed. And then the next section, they suggest how profits will be divided. So if it's just you, then you can say, like, as this single member of this LLC, I'm going to get all the profits. Or if it's you and a partner, like, how are you going to split it? Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? Why? How? What do you do if extra people come on board? Those are the kinds of things you're going to be answering. So you're separating those areas into different like little paragraphs. It still is probably only going to be like 1 page, maybe 2. I don't imagine it to be like 30 pages. Lawyers write them 30 pages long, but students usually write them a page or 2. But it can be longer or shorter, half a page, whatever. Just you're addressing those half a dozen provisions and then you're going to execute it. So at the very bottom, you're going to have some kind of line that's like, signed this blank day of March 2024 by who? Who are the members of this LLC? And so you're going to have like, it can be a real signature, you scan it back in. It can be a fake signature you created in Word. You know how you can do the curly Q fonts and then the typed fonts to make it look like you signed it, that kind of stuff. And then always include, whether it's your cover letter or it's the governing document created, include your capacity for signing. Like show the world why you are legit, why you had the authority to create this document and execute it. So you're going to sign it, with your name, if it's an LLC, as the member of the LLC, because that shows the world you're the owner of the LLC.
For the forms that need to be turned into the Secretary of State, do we also have to do the transmittal forms as well? Or are we just
Yes.
assuming that we're doing? Okay.
So when you're looking at those filing procedures, it talks about a name reservation form and a transmittal form and articles of organization. Those are the primary forms I'm going to be looking for the Secretary of State. Because if you look at the grading rubric, I don't know if I showed that on the screen. I was going through the bullet points. I think I talked about it a little bit, but like, the 20% of your grade is your choice of entity, 35 and 35, that big bulk of your project is about including all the right documents and doing them properly. So if you include documents that are improper, you'll lose points. If you're missing documents you should have included, you could lose points, in that the first chunk of 35% of the research component. And then the second chunk of, did you properly complete the documents you did turn in? Did you, little things like, did you execute that operating agreement or whatever your governing document is? Like, does it have a signature and a name? And, or is it just like in a draft mode where you just included some provisions, maybe a title, but it's not actually executed for your pretend business, that kind of thing. Your meeting minutes, do they make sense? Is it an agenda that just says, these are the topics I was going to cover? Or is it a record of the meeting? I met on March 4th in the Ingram Library. I decided I was going to be an LLC. I adopted my operating agreement and decided I want to buy a website. Like, how that's a different record of what I actually did, as opposed to my business meeting is going to be a budget report and a calendar, review and you know what I mean? Like that's like an agenda of what you're going to do, as opposed to like, this is what I actually accomplished. And so keeping those records again is part of those formalities that prevent people from piercing that corporate veil.
And also on the EIN, if I'm just doing a sole member LLC or single member LLC, when I the first line that says to put the name of the entity or the individual, is it better if I just put my name instead of putting
That's
the name of the
fine.
LLC?
I won't take points off either way,
Okay.
whether you put the name of your LLC or the name of you.
Okay, thanks.
For the annual registration, since it's March and everything, and we're doing this, I'm assuming today's date or whatever
Yeah.
date we're doing it, are we prepaying the annual registration to show that we know it, or?
Yes. So that's a good question. I just include it on your checks page that you know that it's going to be a fee that's due, because that's just sort of a silly little part of this project that I want to include, just so that as you're learning this process, you recognize that that's something that comes due every year at the beginning of the year, period. Because it's really sad when people think they're protected as an entity and then they missed
Yeah.
like a little administrative something like that and their business got dissolved and they had no idea, because they just formed it and they thought, well, they were all good and they missed that little fee. And so something like a $50 annual registration fee for my students, I care about you and I want to make sure you learn the ropes. And that's just something that making a fake check for that annual registration fee, showing me that that it's a thing that you'd have to pay that comes due every year, is more of me assessing your learning than, in reality, like you could form your business in a time frame to where you wouldn't be paying this again for till next year because this is spring semester. But to show me that it's due, just include that on your checks page.
Okay.
So the main three that we need to make sure we always have, of course, is our name reservation, articles of organization, and our transmittal form. And I know our IEN and our annual registration forms, but like
Well,
those are
there's
kind
no
of
form there's not a form you need for annual registration. For in real life, that's something that is just auto-generated from the Secretary of State's website. When you want
and
to
you just
pay it, you
pay.
just
Yeah.
click find your name, your business, pay. But so for this, all I need is just I'm looking for it in your checks page. So it's not worth a ton of points. If people forget to do it, it won't dramatically affect their grade on this project. But that's just an easy way to not lose those points by including it on your checks page. But those are the government forms. And then there's the stuff you create yourself, your cover letter, your governing document, meeting minutes, checks page.
If we
And that's
want
specific to an LLC. If we were talking about corporations, it's a different number of documents because you have to have newspaper notice and, you do bylaws instead of operating agreement, that kind of stuff.
if we want you to look at our work before submitting it or whatever, have you look at what we've been doing? Do we just email it to you?
Yes, email it to me, definitely. I'm not looking in the Dropbox for drafts. So if any of you or someone watching this video has submitted a draft to the Dropbox, please email it to me instead. Email me at the normal tthomas@westga.edu, so that I can see that as a draft, because I'm not even thinking about looking at the Dropbox until after the deadline is passed to grade your projects. I'll try to get a few of them, start grading them before spring break. And then I'm traveling with the management study abroad students to South Africa for spring break, which I have no idea what my internet access will look like. So I can probably guarantee I won't be grading your projects over spring break. So give me, 2 or 3 weeks to get this project graded. I'll grade the first few in draft mode. When I'm finished grading all of the projects, I'll go back and grade the first ones that I initially graded, because I want to make sure I'm fair. Sometimes at the beginning of grading, I might be more nitpicky, or maybe I'm too generous in the beginning and I was more nitpicky at the end. Like, I just want to make sure that I'm looking at both ends of the spectrum of the projects I've graded to try to stay very consistent and be fair to all of you. And then once I've released all the grades, if you want to come and talk to me about your project or find out why, and I'll put in the notes, like if you lost points or something, like why or whatever, but or if you want to talk to me about this is something you've thought about in the future for forming a business, I'm happy to go into more detail about what kind of things I think could improve the plan you have. And then I'm also, this is a side note, but I'm bringing in a special guest speaker the week after this project is due. He's coming not on Tuesday, but on Thursday to come speak for a few minutes about an entrepreneurial opportunity. He's doing like a 10-week boot camp next fall. If any of you guys if you do this project and you enjoyed this experience and you do have, like the heart for being an entrepreneur, that's something that you dream about or one of your goals, then he's your guy. And there's this boot camp that he's doing in the fall. And then they're going to finish that boot camp with like a Shark Tank kind of pitch competition and have like prize money available. So I don't want to steal his thunder. I don't want to tell you too much, but he's coming to class, to my face-to-face students. There's any of you in face-to-face on that Thursday. And I am going to record his visit and post it for those of you that are my online class so that you'll be able to hear what he has to say as well. Assuming technology cooperates. Like I said, today I had my worries that this call wasn't even going to happen, but luckily it worked out. Hopefully the camera's working good enough to record. Otherwise, your classmates may not get the benefit of your questions. They may get a link to a previous Q&A from another semester.
For the meeting minutes, if I'm a single member LLC, it's okay if I'm just the one at the meeting doing like
Absolutely.
drafting it. And
That's
then
that's like the hard thing, right? Is if somebody is a single member LLC, they're way more likely to not keep those kind of records. And that's why it's even more important to do so. Because as a single member LLC, that's the exact kind of target that someone's going to want to pierce that corporate veil. Because if they can pierce that veil and say, you're not really an LLC separate entity, you're really a sole proprietor, and therefore all of your personal assets are at risk.
I will say, my dad owns an LLC, and yeah, it's pretty much that. I'm like, he's a single member, so he is, or his accountant, which is my mom's like brother, is saying
Yeah.
you need to go to an S corp because you don't do any of like you don't do like he pays his registration fee, but I'm like, have you ever had whatever a meeting on it? He's like, no. I was like, okay. I was like, you need to go to an S corp. So he's gonna.
Well,
I
and I
think he's
mean,
gonna try to go over to it.
yeah, and he doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, those are tax implications. There are differences whether you take draws or, it's flow through tax and all that kind of stuff, which you don't have to worry about that for this class because this is not your accounting class, but at the end of the day, those are the kind of things that as an attorney, I advise people to focus on preventing others from being able to pierce that corporate veil. Because in a lawsuit, if your business is suffering and struggling, that doesn't mean that your kid's college fund or your boat or your beach house or whatever has to go down with someone suing the business. They can't attach to that stuff because the business is a separate entity from you personally. And so it might feel silly keeping records when you were the only decision maker, but it also shows that you went through the hassle of keeping those records. And that's more evidence to prove that you were doing everything you possibly could to keep your business and your individual self as separate legal persons.
Okay.
Same thing with finances. Like in real life, there's people that cross contaminate their finances a lot with business and personal, and that's not a good plan because again, keeping that entity separate and secure with that corporate veil is really important. And if things ever go bad, I mean, you always hope things are going to go good, but you protect yourself against when things go bad in situations of a lawsuit or bankruptcy. Commingling those funds could breach that corporate veil and allow someone to attach to your personal assets. So, any other questions?
How do we find the not social security number, the EIN number paperwork again on the IRS website?
If you search for EIN application, it just pops up.
Okay,
I can share my screen again if you want, but I mean, that's all I did is I clicked the link from CourseDen, went to the IRS and typed in EIN application, and it will show you there. The first result is their recommended online application to just quickly generate a real EIN in real life. Don't do that. That's not what you want for the project. You want the PDF pretend version for your pretend business for this pretend project. And just make sure that you look at the EIN application instruction page and the EIN application PDF that's a fillable PDF file.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
With the IENs and any of like the government forms like that, like I can see like I can fill it out and all that, but to save it, do I need to like open actual Adobe Acrobat and save it, or could I print it out and then make it a file on my PDF for my phone?
That is almost a technical question that's beyond my lawyering expertise. But what I can tell you on my computer is I can save a copy of a filled in PDF.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's Adobe working in the background or not.
It could be. I think
But
it's
you
just like
always
it's
can
like a
print to
something.
PDF. So even if you
Okay.
don't have any special software on your computer or you're running a Chromebook that doesn't use a lot of software, no matter what you have, you can almost always just print to PDF from a Word document, from a website, anything. When you just hit
Okay.
print, select PDF as your printout, and then it will save the filled in all your answers version of the PDF.
Okay.
If you can save the fillable version, that's helpful if you want to make changes. Like if you're proofreading it and you're like, oh, I meant to put this instead, you can type that one line instead of having to fill the whole format again. But relatively speaking, those government documents are pretty straightforward and don't take a ton of time to fill out. It's more about the research to find the documents you need.
Yeah.
And then making sure you're following the instructions correctly and stuff.
I'm saying if the worst came to worst, like I print this out, make a file to a PDF from my phone since iPhones can do that, and then I
Mhm.
could upload that and that'd be fine. If
Absolutely.
as long as it's like good quality. Okay.
Yeah. And another thing that you can do that I didn't demonstrate on this because it's kind of hard to demonstrate on like a Zoom call. But any of you that are in a face-to-face class, I can show you hands-on what it looks like. But most of you are familiar with taking a screen capture on your cell phone. And I don't know if you know that you can do the same thing on a computer. Do you know how to take a screen capture on your computer?
Yes.
Because some students are surprised that they could even do that. But you just use the print screen button, and there's a different command prompt on Macs that I'll look it up again so I can add it to your course announcements. But you just screenshot the filled in PDF as an image, like make it to where the whole, like, zoom out enough to where the whole entire version of that fillable document is available on your screen. Take a screenshot and then paste that image into your Word document that you're doing for the project. Crop it down. Tools are already there in Word to crop a picture. And then zoom out again so it looks like a full page. And then as you're scrolling through the Word document, you can't even tell like that wasn't created right there in the Word document. As long as you crop it nicely and it's a good quality image, you can have it right there in your Word document. And that's another example where at the end for your final version, you want to save it as a PDF, because when you have images and you have text, that's the kind of thing that can really get like really messed up when you are switching, from your version of Word to my version of Word or Corsten's version of the Word viewer. That's why I recommend, I'll accept any kind of file format you want to turn in. But if you want my recommendation, it's to make your final version a PDF version.
If anyone does need to like print it out and scan it in, I work at Neva Lumsden, the public library, and you can go there and use our public computers and print it out, and then we can scan it into your email for you. You would just need to pay for the print if
Yeah,
that's something anyone needs.
that's good to know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. I appreciate that.
There's also a free trial PDF version, but if you just keep opening the website, it's called Small PDF. You just add as many documents as you need and it'll merge into one for you for free. Just
I've
keep
used
opening a new one.
Yeah, I've used a PDF merger on Google Docs before too. Like, how Google Docs has like the different plugins that you can use.
Yeah.
I've once upon a time found a free like plugin on my Google Doc to be able to merge into PDFs. But I'm like Christian, I usually use my cell phone to like scan documents together as a PDF. I've used the free version on like iPhone, and then there's also an inexpensive app that I've used before called TurboScan. And I've used that like in the courtroom when we've had to e-file stuff. I have somebody like I have a printout of form, they sign it, and I scan it into like our Peach Court system, like right there after the judge signed it. So, even in regular everyday life, there's times where you need to scan and upload and do things like that on the fly. So it's helpful when your cell phone can do all that.
For the fillable PDFs, when it asks for a signature, but it doesn't have one of those fillable blanks, do you just leave it blank or do you want us to like figure out a way to scribble something on it?
I know that it's hard to like find a way to scribble it. You can do whatever you want. I'm not going to like count off like you forgot to sign it. As long as you're typing your name and everything else on the form is filled in, I'll assume you just didn't have a way to like sign it. You
Okay.
are welcome to use your mouse to scribble in. You're welcome to like when you put it in a Word document to use a little text box or something. I mean, any of that stuff is fine, but I'm not going to like count off on your project for little things like that, like real signature, fake signature, skip signature. When it's a document you create, like your governing document, I expect you to include a line for like signature, printed name, capacity, just like you would on any other formal document. And I'd expect on anything you're filling out that use your full business name, because these are legally binding documents to like create your business. So it's like if you were, what's a legally binding document you guys fill out? Like if you're going to renew your driver's license or something, you don't write your nickname, right? You use your government name. So for these business documents, use the full legal business name rather than like a shortened nickname of your business. Because that's something I've seen in the past with students where they'll like name their business, whatever, Inc., LLC, whatever, and then they'll leave that ending off, or they'll abbreviate the business name or something on these like official documents. And you wouldn't put some acronym or whatever for your business. You'd put your legit legal name of the business. Any other questions? Oh, I see in the comments. I'm sorry, Callista, you haven't had sound. Hopefully the sound is recording. Are you guys having any sound issues? Anybody else?
I'm not, but I'm on my PC.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also on the laptop.
She just said I can hear now.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Sorry about that, Callista. I had the chat box open because I intended to pay attention to it. And then I just got distracted while I was talking and I missed your comment earlier. I apologize, but I saw it now. I'm glad you can hear now. And I will try to upload this recording and post it on to Corsten for whoever wasn't able to join us our call. I know that people have a lot going on this week, and this was totally an optional thing anyway. But I will post this if all the sound and video worked out fine. If not, I'll post another Q&A from a similar class just so that you guys have something to review back to, or other people in the class have to look at for questions and things. But I appreciate y'all joining me. In the very beginning, I thought it was just gonna be me and Cadence, but I'm glad more people jumped in.
No, it was useful.
Well, good. I'm glad. And I'm glad that for all y'all in my face-to-face, like you got the week off so you can work hard on these projects and get it knocked out of the way. I guess the other thing I wanted to make sure is y'all don't forget that there's MindTap homework associated with these chapters. The project is to assess your learning of the unit, but just like all the other units we took exams, there's still like the chapter content that you do on MindTap.
Okay.
So make sure you get that out of the way so you don't forget about it this week.
I'm assuming, is it with the deadline? I'm assuming it's Sunday, whatever, at 12.
Yeah.
But if we're 5 minutes late due to I don't know, technical, not saying, but is it like cutoff date where it stops, you can't upload after 12, or is it okay?
And so I have to do that just because otherwise where would I draw the line, right? Like 5
minutes.
Yeah. And so I have it set to where 11:59 it closes. I'll put an announcement to this thing. But what I've done in the past is I've said, if you're going to upload your document and it's like 11:50 or whatever, and there's too many people in your class on Corsten in that moment, so Corsten's running like really slow. I don't know if you ever, sometimes people have said they've experienced that during an exam, like close to the deadline, like it just starts running really slow. What you can do is you can email me your project instead so that you have that official timestamp that you turned it in before midnight.
Okay.
So send it as an email with like the subject line that this is your major project, like for real turning in. It's not a question or something. And then that way I will have the timestamp.
You can reopen it like the next day, and then for people that are late or anything, you can okay.
Or it might even still let you do it, but it'll probably like flag it as not great
late
or something like that. But yeah, just so as long as I have something that you turned in that showed that you finished your project on time, you turned it in on time, that kind of thing. And then I can always just manually add your grade to the grade book. Even it's just the thing is, if somebody doesn't turn something in the Dropbox of the assignment Dropbox on Corsten, it doesn't give me the ability to evaluate their project. So that's why if you're in a group or you're working with a partner, that's why it's important for the partner to individually turn in that group member evaluation. Because if I don't have something in the Dropbox, then I don't get the little box for the evaluation to pop up so where I can evaluate them. But I can always manually add your grade into the grade book.
Okay.
Callista has a couple questions. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. But they don't have a working microphone.
Okay, so it says draft all required paperwork to form the business entity. How many documents? Okay, so I can't answer like how many because it's different for every type. One of the things I just went through was like an example was LLC because that's a popular choice, and that one has some government forms and some forms you create yourself. And so it's only going to have 8 documents or whatever total. Whereas a corporation, if you're incorporating, they're going to have additional documents that aren't included for the LLC. So they're going to have like a newspaper notice, and that's an additional check that they'd have. And, so it depends on what you're actually forming. I can't give you like a number of documents, just like I can't give you a number of pages. Typically, these projects are going to be like 8 to 12 pages, not much longer than that. And not much shorter than that if they've got everything they need to include. And then putting all the documents in a PDF and turning them in together that way is perfectly fine. And definitely please don't turn them in individually. Turning them into the Dropbox individually, the Dropbox will let you upload a number of documents. So if you upload something and then you review it and you're like, oh, I need to make a change, you upload another one, just put a note like, grade this one as my final version, not the other one I turned in. But your document itself should all be put together into one file. Because if you're uploading each document, like your name reservation, your cover letter, all these things separately, you run the risk of forgetting to turn something in, it might make it where I skip something accidentally because I'm having to open up each individual file. Whereas if it's one document, I can scroll up and down the pages and go through my mental checklist of, okay, this is the kind of entity you're forming. This is what I'm looking for to show that you completely formed it correctly. So definitely put them all together into one file and just make sure you include all the different documents. I mean, logically, a new type of document would start on a new page. So like, let's say your governing document is 2 pages or your cover letter is 2 pages, but it's not really 2 pages. It's like a page and a quarter of another one.
You
Start
page
your
break?
next document on page 3. That kind of thing.
So with our documents, like our IEN and all that will just take up, like, we'll put 1 page for the IEN, 1 page for this, 1 page for that. Don't try to fit more than one on 1 page.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because that way it needs to be, if you're doing like an image of the page in a Word document, I need you to crop it and zoom out to where it's the full size of a page, just like as if you were to print it and scan it.
Okay.
Because I'm looking for, specific things on the different lines of those forms.
Okay.
Okay. Is that all?
I think so.
All righty.
Oh,
no,
I
you
sent
won't
you
be
an email
presenting
at
these. I saw
1
the
a.m.
question. So yeah, no, you'll just be turning them into me and I'll grade them. And then once I've gotten them all graded, I'll release the grades because that also helps me. So I'm not answering questions about grades while I still have more projects to grade.
Okay.
Like, process. I kind of process all the projects, make sure that, so like I said, I won't be grading over spring break. I'll try to get a few done before we start spring break, but it'll be after spring break, a week or 2 before you'll get your grades in.
So I know I sent you an email like last night or early hours of this morning with a proposed version of this project thing. And I know it's wrong now.
Okay.
But can you still look at it and
I'll look at it.
what's
I got
there?
a handful of emails with either questions or drafts or whatever, like late last
Yeah.
night, early this morning. I just had meetings this morning and I've
Gotcha.
got more
Okay.
meetings this afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to look at it. But
Mm.
And same thing with this video. Like I probably won't have a chance to process this video maybe until
Yeah.
tomorrow morning.
And
But
that's good. I'm gonna try to finish and update it and send you a new one before you look at it, but just in
okay.
case.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah.
good.
All right. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Have a good day, guys, and email
You
me or
too.
text me if you have any questions.
Of course.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.